The night had fallen faster than she expected. The sky was a deep, endless black, dotted only by a few pale stars, struggling to shine through the thick clouds. A cold wind swept across the empty plains, making her pull her coat tighter around her shoulders. Every step she took on the dusty path seemed louder than the last, echoing in the quiet night. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching her. Every rustle in the bushes, every distant howl of an animal made her heart race. She had walked this trail countless times during the day, but the darkness had changed everything. What once felt familiar now seemed dangerous and unpredictable. Her name was Emily, and she had never been the type to panic easily. She was strong in her own way, always facing challenges head-on. But tonight was different. Tonight, she felt vulnerable in a way she had never felt before. Perhaps it was because she had been alone for hours, far from any town or neighbor. Perhaps it was because her mind kept returning to old memories of times when she had felt unsafe. She shivered, not just from the cold, but from the weight of her own fear. She tried to calm herself, taking deep breaths and repeating words in her head like a mantra. It's just the wind. It's just the wind. Nothing else. But the moment she told herself that, a sharp sound made her freeze. Something shifted in the shadows, and her eyes darted around, trying to find the source. She saw nothing, yet her instincts screamed that she was not alone. She quickened her pace, hoping the path would soon lead her to the small cabin she had seen earlier, a faint light flickering through its window like a promise of safety. Her mind wandered back to how she had ended up here. It had started as a simple walk through the countryside, an attempt to escape the stress of her life in the nearby town. She had wanted peace, a moment to breathe and forget her worries. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, the familiar roads became alien. Trees that once looked friendly now appeared like looming sentinels, and the gentle chirping of birds had been replaced by the eerie silence of the night. Emily realized that she had underestimated the night's darkness and overestimated her own courage. As she walked, the wind carried strange noises, sounds that she could not identify. A branch cracked somewhere to her left, and she jumped, her heart thudding painfully in her chest. She reminded herself that she was rational, that no real harm could come to her here. Yet her mind refused to be persuaded. Memories of stories she had heard, of people lost in the night or attacked while alone, surged unbidden. She shook her head violently, trying to banish the thoughts. She didn't want to be consumed by fear, but it was stubbornly creeping in, clawing at her resolve. The path curved slightly, and Emily could see the dim outline of a fence in the distance. Beyond it, she knew, lay the safety of the main road. Her steps grew faster, her fingers gripping the strap of her bag as if it were a lifeline. Every shadow now seemed alive, every sound amplified by her racing heart. The wind shifted, carrying a scent she couldn't quite identify, something earthy, perhaps from the nearby forest, but it made her stomach twist. She pulled her coat closer, hugging it like a shield, wishing desperately for someone to appear and make her feel safe. Her pace faltered when she heard a soft, low growl. It was close, almost too close. She froze, listening intently, straining to distinguish the noise from the wind or the creaking trees. It sounded alive, deliberate, and it made her breath catch. She tried to tell herself it was an animal, nothing more, yet the fear in her chest refused to obey reason. Her imagination ran wild, conjuring shapes in the darkness, figures lurking just beyond her vision, waiting. She swallowed hard and continued walking, each step deliberate, controlled, even though every nerve in her body screamed at her to run. Hours, or what felt like hours, passed in this tense limbo. Emily's mind vacillated between hope and fear. She tried to focus on something tangible, a way to measure distance, to count steps, to regain control. The sound of her own breathing became both comforting and alarming. She counted them silently, in rhythm with her steps, trying to slow her heart. But the method only half worked. Every time she heard the crack of a twig, she jumped, her body tense and ready to flee. Eventually, a small glow appeared on the horizon, faint but unmistakable. Relief washed over her in waves, so strong that she almost stumbled. She headed toward it, praying it was the cabin she had spotted earlier. As she drew closer, she could see the flickering light of a lantern through the window. It was modest, unassuming, but it represented safety in a way that no words could express. She quickened her pace again, her body fueled by hope, yet caution kept her mind alert. She didn't know what dangers could still lurk outside, and she was unwilling to let her guard down entirely. The closer she got, the more she noticed subtle signs of life smoke curling from the chimney, the faint sound of movement inside. Emily exhaled, allowing herself a brief moment of gratitude. She approached the door, but her hands trembled as she reached for the handle. Something about the stillness made her hesitate. Her instincts screamed at her to wait, to be careful, yet the pull of safety was stronger. Taking a deep breath, she opened the door and stepped inside. Warmth enveloped her immediately, contrasting sharply with the chill of the night. A fire crackled in the hearth, sending sparks dancing upward. The cabin smelled of wood and warmth, of a place lived in and cared for. She closed the door behind her, leaning against it for a moment, feeling the tension in her shoulders ease just slightly. For the first time in hours, she felt a small measure of safety. Yet the memory of the night, the fear she had felt, lingered. She knew she couldn't forget how vulnerable she had been, how quickly fear had taken hold. As she moved further into the cabin, Emily's eyes adjusted to the dim light. She saw the simple furnishings: a small table with a few chairs, a bookshelf lined with well-worn books, and a bed in the corner. Everything seemed ordinary, comforting even, but she remained alert, her mind unwilling to let go of the caution that had saved her outside. She reminded herself that she was still alone, and that the night was far from over. Her thoughts drifted to what she had learned about herself that night. Fear was a powerful force, she realized, capable of overwhelming even the strongest mind. But she also understood the strength that came from perseverance, from pushing forward despite terror. Every step she had taken on that dark path had been a small victory, a testament to her resilience. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that she had been watched, that she had not been entirely alone. Emily settled near the fire, wrapping herself in a blanket she found draped over a chair. The flames cast shadows on the walls, flickering and dancing, as if alive. She listened carefully, straining to detect any sign of intruder or danger. But all she could hear was the wind outside and the occasional pop of the firewood. Slowly, she began to relax, though a thread of fear still lingered in her chest. She knew the night was far from over, but she also knew she had survived its first trials. Hours passed in quiet reflection. Emily thought about how life often tested her in unexpected ways, forcing her to confront fears she didn't know she had. This night had been one of those moments, a trial of courage and endurance. She realized that fear was natural, but it did not define her. Survival, resilience, and hope were equally powerful forces within her. And as she stared into the fire, feeling its warmth seep into her bones, she knew that she had taken the first step toward facing whatever else the night might hold. Yet even in this small sanctuary, she could not completely escape the sense of unease. Somewhere beyond the cabin walls, the night continued, mysterious and unpredictable. Emily understood that she would have to remain vigilant, to trust her instincts, and to be prepared for anything. But for now, in this small corner of warmth and light, she allowed herself a moment of peace, a fragile, yet precious relief from the darkness she had just endured. Little did she know that this night, filled with fear and uncertainty, was only the beginning. A presence, unexpected yet commanding, was about to enter her life. Someone who would change the course of her night, her story, and perhaps her understanding of trust, courage, and desire. But for now, Emily remained alone, shivering, yet steadfast, on the edge of an encounter that would forever alter her path. Emily's relief in the cabin was short-lived. Though the warmth from the fire began to ease the chill from her bones, her mind could not let go of the lingering fear outside. Every creak of the wooden floor, every whisper of wind against the windows, made her flinch. She wrapped the blanket tighter around her shoulders, hoping it could somehow shield her not just from the cold, but from the memories of the shadows she had left behind. The night felt endless, and she knew she could not stay awake forever, yet sleep seemed impossible with the heaviness of fear pressing against her chest. Then, just as she was beginning to consider moving closer to the window to catch a glimpse of the outside world, a sudden sound reached her ears. It was soft at first, almost indistinguishable from the wind. But then it became clearer, deliberate. The low, steady sound of hooves striking the earth, approaching fast. Emily's heart skipped a beat. Her instincts screamed at her to hide, to find some corner to curl into and disappear from view. She crouched behind the table, holding her breath, her eyes fixed on the window. Through the dim glow of the lantern light, she saw a figure emerge from the shadows outside. At first, it was hard to make out much, just a silhouette moving with certainty, a person riding toward the cabin on horseback. The figure was tall, strong, and carried a presence that was impossible to ignore. His hat shaded his face, but there was an air about him that seemed calm, unshakable, like someone who belonged in the night rather than feared it. He slowed the horse as he neared the cabin, guiding it with ease, and Emily could see a glimmer of purpose in the way he moved. For a moment, she hesitated, unsure whether this was yet another danger or an answer to her desperate need for help. Her hand trembled as she reached for the door handle, torn between curiosity and caution. The cowboy dismounted smoothly, landing softly on the ground, and began to approach the cabin with slow, deliberate steps. There was no sudden movement, no threat in his presence, yet Emily's fear refused to vanish immediately. Her heart raced, her mind running through countless scenarios, each one more frightening than the last. Finally, summoning every ounce of courage she had left, she opened the door slightly and peeked out. The man's eyes met hers immediately, steady and calm, holding a kindness that was almost disarming. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice deep but gentle, carrying across the quiet night. Emily swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. She wanted to say no. She wanted to say no, to admit that she was terrified, but words failed her at first. The cowboy noticed her hesitation and offered a small nod of understanding, as if he already knew the answer. I'm fine," Emily finally whispered, though her voice wavered. The cowboy stepped closer, keeping a respectful distance. "It's all right," he said. "You don't have to be alone out here. This night can be cruel if you don't have someone to watch over you." His presence, calm and steady, had a strange effect on Emily. The tension in her shoulders began to ease slightly, replaced by a cautious curiosity. There was something reassuring about him, something she could not quite place, yet it made her feel safer than she had in hours. He glanced toward the path she had walked and then back at her. "You were walking alone?" he asked gently, though there was no judgment in his voice. Emily nodded. She wanted to explain, to tell him why she had come out here, but her words faltered. He seemed to sense this and simply offered a warm, understanding smile. "Let's get you somewhere safe," he said. "I know a place nearby where you can rest, and I'll make sure you're all right." Emily hesitated. She had learned to be cautious, to trust slowly. And this stranger had appeared from nowhere. But there was no threat in his stance, no aggression in his tone, only a quiet confidence that somehow made her believe he meant no harm. Slowly, she nodded, stepping aside to let him enter. The cowboy's movements were deliberate but gentle, and he took care to make her feel comfortable as they prepared to leave the cabin. He led her outside, and Emily was struck by the moonlight that broke through the clouds. The night, though still cold and dark, seemed less menacing in his presence. The horse stood quietly, as if sensing the calm authority of its rider. The cowboy mounted with ease, and he offered Emily his hand. She hesitated, then took it, feeling a strength in his grip that was reassuring without being overbearing. Together, they moved down the path. The sound of hooves steady and rhythmic, blending with the wind in a way that was strangely comforting. As they traveled, the cowboy spoke little at first, letting Emily gather her thoughts and regain composure. The silence between them was not awkward. It was peaceful, allowing her a rare moment to simply breathe. Occasionally, he would glance at her, checking if she was all right. And each time, she felt a little more trust grow in her heart. It was a small, cautious trust, but it was trust nonetheless, a fragile seed in the darkness. "You were scared," he said quietly, almost as if reading her thoughts. Emily nodded, unable to deny it. "Yes," she admitted. I've never been so alone in my life. I didn't know if I could make it through the night." He nodded knowingly. "Fear is natural," he said. "It keeps us alert. But sometimes, it's the people around us who remind us we can be brave. That's why I'm here." There was no arrogance in his voice, only honesty and simplicity. Emily found herself drawn to the sincerity. The quiet reassurance that someone could appear in your darkest hour and not take advantage, but simply guide you safely through it. As the night wore on, they continued their journey. The path was rough, uneven, and filled with the sounds of the night rustling leaves, distant owls, and the occasional animal moving through the brush. Yet Emily's fear, though not gone, had begun to transform. She still felt the cold rush of adrenaline from time to time, but it was tempered by the calm presence of the cowboy beside her. She realized that fear did not have to dominate every moment. With someone who cared, even in the darkest night, there could be moments of safety, moments of hope. At one point, the horse stumbled slightly on a hidden rock, and the cowboy's quick reaction saved them both from a fall. Emily's heart leapt in fear, but he steadied the animal with skillful hands, his calmness reassuring her once again. She felt a spark of admiration not just for his strength and knowledge, but for his composure under pressure. It was rare, she thought, to find someone who could face the night without letting fear control them, and yet, somehow, also see the fear in others and respond with care. After what felt like hours, they reached a small clearing where a simple cabin stood, its windows glowing warmly against the darkness. The cowboy dismounted, helping Emily down with patience and care. She felt her legs trembling, not just from the cold or the fear, but from the strange, fluttering feelings that came from being in the presence of someone who seemed to see her without judgment, who had protected her without asking for anything in return. Inside, the cabin was modest but inviting. The smell of wood smoke and earth filled the air, and the warmth from a small fire spread quickly. The cowboy guided her to a chair by the fire, offering her a blanket and a cup of warm tea he had brought along. Emily accepted, her hands shaking slightly as she held the cup, feeling a strange mix of relief, gratitude, and something else she couldn't yet name. "You're safe now," he said softly. "No one is going to harm you here. Take your time, rest, and let the night pass." Emily nodded, feeling the tension in her body slowly release. She realized that for the first time in hours, she could breathe without the constant grip of fear. The night was still dark, but in this small cabin, with the cowboy's steady presence, it felt manageable. It felt almost safe. As she sat by the fire, Emily began to notice the little things about him, the way his eyes softened when he looked at her, the careful way he moved around the cabin, the subtle confidence in his tone. She didn't know his story, but she sensed layers beneath the surface. Experiences that had shaped him, challenges he had faced, and perhaps kindness that was hard-earned. There was something magnetic about him, a quiet power that drew her attention without demanding it. Hours passed in quiet companionship. Emily spoke cautiously, testing the waters, sharing small details about herself, while the cowboy listened attentively, offering gentle encouragement, but never prying. Their conversation was simple, yet it carried weight. It created a bond, fragile but undeniable, a connection forged not in words alone, but in shared presence and mutual respect. By the time the first light of dawn began to filter through the windows, Emily felt a strange mix of exhaustion and comfort. She had survived the night, not alone as she had feared, but with someone who had stepped into her darkness without hesitation. She realized that this encounter, unexpected and sudden, had already begun to change her. Fear had dominated the hours before, but now, gratitude, trust, and even a faint spark of something deeper had taken root. Little did Emily know, this was only the beginning. The cowboy's arrival had not just saved her from the night, it had opened a door to something entirely new. Something she had not anticipated, but could no longer ignore. The morning sun streamed gently through the small cabin windows, casting a warm, golden light over the modest interior. Emily blinked, still wrapped in the blanket the cowboy had offered her the night before. The fire had died down to soft embers, but the warmth lingered, and for the first time since she had begun her journey, she felt safe enough to truly relax. The events of the night, her fear, the sudden appearance of the cowboy, and his quiet protection played repeatedly in her mind. She realized just how fragile she had felt, and yet how much strength she had discovered within herself. The cowboy stirred, stretching his tall frame as he moved around the cabin. He seemed effortless in everything he did, yet there was a careful precision in his actions. Emily watched him, curious, and a strange feeling washed over her, a mixture of admiration, relief, and something she could not quite name. He noticed her gaze and offered a small, reassuring smile. "Morning," he said softly. "Did you sleep at all?" Emily shifted slightly, offering a faint smile in return. "A little," she admitted. "Not much, but enough to feel better." She paused, feeling a flicker of vulnerability. "Thank you for last night. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't appeared." The cowboy nodded, leaning against the edge of the table. "It wasn't anything extraordinary. I just happened to be passing through, but I'm glad I was there when you needed someone." His words were calm, but Emily sensed a quiet honesty behind them, a simple truth that needed no embellishment. She studied him carefully, noticing the gentle way he spoke, the care in his posture, and the patience in his eyes. He seemed strong, yet not imposing, confident, yet humble. Emily hesitated, unsure how to put her thoughts into words. "I've been scared a lot lately. Not just last night. I guess I didn't realize how much I carry with me until I felt completely alone." Her voice faltered, but the cowboy's gaze remained steady and encouraging. She continued, her words spilling out in small bursts. "I've had times when I felt lost, like I had no one to rely on, and when the fear takes over, I freeze. I can't move. I don't know what to do." The cowboy listened intently, leaning slightly forward. "Fear can be heavy," he said softly, "but it doesn't define you. Feeling afraid doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. The important thing is that you kept moving, even when it was hard. That shows courage." His words were simple, yet they carried a weight that surprised Emily. Nobody had ever spoken to her like this before. Not so gently, not so understandingly. She felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of gratitude and relief that she had not realized she had been craving. Encouraged by his response, Emily allowed herself to share more. "I've made mistakes," she said quietly. Times when I let fear or doubt control me. Times when I trusted the wrong people. And it's hard to move past that, even when I know I should. Last night, alone, I felt that all over again. She looked down at her hands, twisting the blanket nervously. It's like the fear never really leaves me. It just hides until the moment it can scare me again. The cowboy nodded knowingly. I understand that, he said. More than you might think. I've been through nights that felt impossible. Days when everything seemed to go wrong. There were times I felt like giving up. Like the weight of everything would crush me. But I learned something important sometimes. The right person, or even just the right moment, can make all the difference. Emily looked up at him, curious despite herself. The right moment? She asked. Yes, he replied. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. Sometimes it's just someone showing up when you need help. Someone listening without judgment. Someone letting you know you're not alone. That can change everything. His eyes met hers. Calm, honest, and steady. Emily felt a strange connection forming in that instant. A fragile bond that seemed to anchor her even as the memories of her fear lingered. For a while, they sat in silence, letting the words settle between them. The cabin felt peaceful, a stark contrast to the tension and terror of the night before. Emily realized that sharing her fears had lifted some of the weight from her shoulders, and the cowboy's presence made her feel less vulnerable. She found herself listening to his voice, noticing the slight edge of weariness beneath his calm demeanor, the hints of stories untold in his eyes. Curiosity overcame her caution. "Can I ask you something?" she said softly. "Of course," he replied. "Have you ever been afraid?" she asked, almost whispering. She felt a strange courage in asking this, a desire to know him beyond the protective exterior he had shown her. The cowboy chuckled lightly, a warm, low sound that made her smile despite the nervous flutter in her chest. "More times than I can count," he admitted. "Fear isn't something that disappears. It stays with us, comes and goes in different forms. But you learn to face it, to keep moving even when your heart is pounding and your mind is screaming at you to turn back. You find a way, or you find someone to help you through it." Emily nodded, feeling a deep sense of understanding. "I never thought about it like that," she said. "I always thought fear meant I wasn't strong enough. But hearing you say that, it makes sense. Facing it doesn't mean you're not scared. It just means you're brave enough to move anyway." The cowboy smiled, a quiet, approving smile that made her heart flutter unexpectedly. "Exactly," he said. "Bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's action, in spite of it." For the next few hours, they continued talking, sharing small stories and moments from their lives. Emily spoke about her childhood, about the times she had felt alone, and about the small victories that had helped her survive difficult moments. The cowboy listened, occasionally offering insights or quiet encouragement. He shared stories of his own times when he had faced challenges, moments of loneliness, and the lessons he had learned along the way. Their conversation was gentle, sincere, and entirely without pretense. It was not forced or rushed. It unfolded naturally, building trust with every word. Emily began to notice the little things about him, the calm way he moved, the thoughtfulness in his responses, the patience he showed even when she struggled to find the right words. There was a warmth in his presence, a sense of safety that went beyond physical protection. She realized that trust was growing between them, slow and steady, like a tiny flame refusing to be extinguished by the lingering darkness. At one point, Emily admitted quietly, "I didn't think anyone could help me last night. I thought I'd have to face it alone." Her voice trembled slightly, but she felt no shame in her vulnerability. The cowboy's eyes softened. "You didn't have to face it alone," he said gently. "You still don't have to. And you never will, if you don't want to." His words were simple, yet they resonated deeply within her. Emily felt a tear slip down her cheek, but it was not a tear of fear. It was relief, gratitude, and something unspoken that had begun to grow between them. They spent the day in the cabin, the hours passing in quiet companionship. Emily realized that her fear had not vanished entirely, but it had lost its power over her. With the cowboy by her side, she felt a newfound strength and courage. She understood that sharing her vulnerabilities did not make her weak. It allowed her to connect, to trust, and to find support when she needed it most. By evening, Emily felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and comfort. The day had been filled with conversation, reflection, and the slow building of trust. She looked at the cowboy, noticing the faint lines of fatigue on his face, the quiet confidence in his posture, and the warmth in his eyes. She realized that he had become more than just a protector in the night. He had become a companion. Someone who had seen her fear, accepted it, and helped her navigate through it without judgment. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow across the cabin, Emily felt a sense of peace she had not known in a long time. She knew that fear would always be a part of life. But she had discovered something equally powerful: trust, understanding, and the courage to face the unknown with someone by her side. The night that had begun in terror had transformed into a day of connection and quiet hope. And Emily knew that she would carry the lessons of this day with her always. Little did she know, the bond formed in those hours of shared vulnerability was only the beginning. The connection between them, fragile yet undeniable, would soon grow into something deeper, something that neither fear nor darkness could diminish. But for now, in the warm glow of the cabin, Emily allowed herself to simply be, to trust, to breathe, and to feel the strange, comforting presence of the cowboy who had appeared when she needed him most. The days that followed were filled with quiet routines, small tasks, and shared moments that slowly drew Emily and the cowboy closer. The bond they had formed in the cabin had grown beyond mere gratitude or relief. It had become a connection rooted in understanding, trust, and the subtle comfort of shared presence. Each day felt like a careful dance, neither rushed nor forced, but it carried with it the slow-building awareness of something more. Emily could not deny the way her heart quickened when he entered the room, or the way her thoughts lingered on him even when he was occupied with chores outside. The cowboy, whose name she now knew was Jack, moved through the world with a calm confidence that fascinated her. He could handle tasks effortlessly, whether tending to the small garden outside the cabin, repairing the fence along the nearby trail, or guiding their horse with skillful hands. Emily watched him often, noting the subtle movements of his body, the quiet patience in his eyes, and the way he seemed completely at ease in the world, even when it was unpredictable and sometimes harsh. She admired him, not just for his strength, but for the way he carried himself: quiet, deliberate, and yet somehow magnetic. One morning, they decided to take the horse along a nearby trail that led to the river. The path was rugged, winding through thick woods and across uneven terrain. Emily felt a familiar twinge of nervousness. But Jack's steady presence calmed her. He walked beside her horse at first, talking gently about the sights along the trail, the way the river curved around the bend, and the small wildlife that thrived in the area. His voice was easy to listen to, soothing in a way that made her forget, if only for moments, the fears that had haunted her for so long. As they moved deeper into the woods, the terrain grew more challenging. Loose rocks made the trail slippery, and fallen branches blocked the path in places. Emily's horse stumbled slightly, and she gripped the reins tightly, feeling her pulse quicken. Jack noticed immediately and moved closer, his hand resting lightly on the horse's neck to steady it. "You're doing fine," he said calmly. "Just take your time. We'll get through this together." Emily felt a warmth spread through her chest, not from the sun, which was bright but gentle, but from the simple reassurance in his tone. She realized that she trusted him more than she had trusted anyone in a long time. That trust was not forced. It had grown naturally, like a small plant reaching toward sunlight. And along with that trust came another feeling she had not fully admitted to herself, a quiet, persistent pull toward him that she could no longer ignore. The trail led them to a small clearing by the riverbank, where the water sparkled in the sunlight. Emily dismounted carefully, her legs a little unsteady from the ride, and Jack helped her with a steadying hand. She felt a thrill at the touch, fleeting but undeniable, and quickly stepped back to regain her composure. The river was calm, the sound of flowing water soothing, and the two of them stood for a moment in silence, taking in the beauty around them. "You were brave last night," Jack said quietly, breaking the silence. "And you've been brave every day since. That's something not everyone can do." Emily looked at him, her heart fluttering. I don't feel brave," she admitted. "I feel scared most of the time. But being with you, it makes me feel like I can handle more than I thought I could." Jack's gaze softened, and he nodded. "That's all bravery really is," he said. "It's moving forward, even when fear is there. And you've done that. You're stronger than you know." The sincerity in his words made Emily feel seen in a way she had rarely experienced. She wanted to tell him how much she appreciated him, how safe and understood she felt. But the words got caught in her throat. Instead, she offered a shy smile, one that Jack returned with a warmth that made her cheeks flush. As the day progressed, small challenges tested them. A fallen tree blocked part of the trail, forcing them to work together to move it. Jack showed her the best way to lift and leverage the heavy wood without straining herself. Emily found herself laughing when he made a small joke about the stubbornness of trees and the difficulty of teaching them manners. The sound of her laughter surprised her. It had been so long since she had felt this light, this free, even in the presence of someone she admired. Later, when they reached a narrow section of the riverbank, the ground gave way slightly beneath her horse's hooves. Emily panicked for a moment, gripping the reins tightly, but Jack's calm voice guided her. "Easy," he said. "We've got this. Take it slow." His hands were near hers, guiding and steadying her without crowding her space. She felt a warmth, an undeniable connection that made her pulse race. She quickly reminded herself to focus on the trail, on her breathing, but the pull she felt toward him was undeniable. Throughout the day, Emily became increasingly aware of the subtle tension between them. Not tension in the sense of conflict, but an unspoken energy, a quiet desire that neither dared to name aloud. She caught herself noticing small details, the way his hair fell slightly over his eyes, the gentle curve of his smile, the calm strength in his hands, and she realized that her thoughts returned to him even when she tried to focus elsewhere. Every glance, every shared laugh, every touch carried a significance she had never experienced before. By the time they returned to the cabin, the sun was beginning to set, casting a warm orange glow across the horizon. Emily dismounted, her legs tired but her heart still racing. Jack offered his hand again, and she took it, feeling the familiar warmth and strength. Inside the cabin, she moved to sit by the fire, feeling the need to process the day, to make sense of the emotions swirling inside her. Jack poured 2 cups of tea and handed one to her, his gaze meeting hers for a brief, lingering moment. "You're thinking a lot," he said softly, as if reading her mind. Emily laughed lightly, a little embarrassed. "Maybe," she admitted. "There's a lot I didn't expect to feel today. I've never felt like this with anyone before." Jack nodded, understanding. "Sometimes feelings take us by surprise," he said. "The important thing is to notice them, to understand them, and to decide what they mean for us. You don't have to rush anything. You don't have to figure it all out at once." His calm presence made Emily feel grounded, even as the pull she felt toward him grew stronger. She realized that desire was not something to fear. It was simply another layer of connection, one that could be explored slowly, with trust and care. As the evening wore on, they sat by the fire, talking quietly about their lives, their dreams, and the small moments that had shaped them. Emily felt a growing sense of intimacy, a deepening connection that went beyond physical attraction. It was rooted in trust, understanding, and shared experiences, both the challenges they faced together and the moments of quiet reflection. She found herself leaning slightly closer, noticing how comfortable it felt to be near him, how natural it was to share space without words. For the first time in a long while, Emily allowed herself to feel fully her fear, her courage, and the undeniable pull of desire she could no longer ignore. She realized that desire was not just about longing, it was about recognition, connection, and the acknowledgement that someone else could see her completely and still choose to stay. And in that quiet cabin, with the firelight flickering and Jack beside her, she understood that this feeling, complex, confusing, thrilling, was worth exploring, carefully, slowly, and with trust. As night fell once again, Emily felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The day had tested them, drawn them closer, and revealed feelings that could no longer be denied. She looked at Jack, noticing the quiet strength in his posture, the warmth in his eyes, and the patience in his gestures, and she felt a fluttering excitement she had never experienced before. She knew that the pull she felt toward him was more than fleeting attraction. It was a deepening connection that would continue to grow, shaped by shared experiences, trust, and mutual understanding. And though neither of them spoke of it aloud, both Emily and Jack sensed the possibilities that lay ahead. The night outside might be dark and uncertain, but within the walls of the cabin, warmth, safety, and a slowly growing desire had begun to take root, an undeniable promise that the journey they were on together was far from over. The night had grown quiet, but the air was heavy with anticipation. Emily sat by the fire in the cabin, her thoughts drifting over the events of the past days. The bond she had formed with Jack had deepened in ways she could hardly describe. The fear that had once consumed her now seemed distant, replaced by trust, warmth, and an undeniable pull she could no longer ignore. Yet, there was still a tension that neither of them had spoken aloud, an awareness that life was unpredictable, that challenges still awaited beyond the cabin walls. As if on cue, the sound of the wind outside shifted, carrying with it a subtle sense of urgency. Emily stiffened, listening carefully. She could hear the trees rustling more violently than before, the branches creaking under the weight of the night breeze. Jack noticed her unease immediately. "Stay close," he said calmly, rising from his chair. "Something is approaching." Emily's heart raced, a mixture of fear and excitement swirling inside her. Despite the comfort she felt in Jack's presence, the night still held unknown dangers, and she knew they would need to face them together. She moved closer to him instinctively, the warmth of his body beside hers grounding her in a way words never could. Jack's hand brushed hers briefly, a silent reassurance that they would face whatever came next side by side. Stepping outside, they were met with a sudden challenge. A small, nearby brush fire had ignited, likely from a fallen ember carried by the wind. The flames were not yet large, but the smoke and heat demanded immediate action. Emily felt a flicker of panic, but Jack's calm demeanor gave her strength. "We need to act quickly," he said. "Help me move the brush away and keep the fire contained." Working together, Emily and Jack managed to push branches and small logs, creating a barrier between the flames and the cabin. The heat licked at their faces, and the smoke made it difficult to breathe, but their teamwork was seamless. Emily felt a rush of adrenaline not from fear alone, but from the shared effort and the sense of connection with Jack. Every glance they exchanged, every subtle touch as they worked, reinforced the trust and unspoken feelings that had been growing over the past days. Once the fire was under control, Jack stepped back and assessed the situation. "That should hold it for now," he said, brushing ash from his jacket. Emily exhaled deeply, feeling a mix of relief and accomplishment. "We did it," she said, her voice trembling slightly from the excitement. Jack smiled, a quiet, proud smile that made her heart skip a beat. "Yes," he replied. "Together, we can face almost anything." The intensity of the moment left Emily feeling both exhausted and exhilarated. She realized how much she had relied on Jack, not just for protection, but for guidance, support, and understanding. In that moment, she understood that her feelings for him were no longer just admiration or gratitude. They were something deeper, more complex, and entirely undeniable. She wanted to tell him, to let him know the depth of what she felt, but words felt inadequate. Instead, she allowed herself to simply be near him, letting the connection speak for itself. As the night settled again, they returned to the cabin, the firelight casting flickering shadows on the walls. Emily wrapped herself in the blanket, feeling the warmth linger as she reflected on the day's events. Jack poured 2 cups of tea and handed one to her, their fingers brushing briefly in a small, electric touch that made her pulse quicken. She realized that the pull she felt toward him was no longer subtle, it was insistent, a quiet longing that demanded acknowledgement. "You were brave today," Jack said softly, settling into a chair beside her. "I'm proud of you." Emily looked at him, her chest tightening. I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. "You've changed everything. You've helped me face things I thought I couldn't, and I don't know how to explain it, but I want to be near you, always." Jack's eyes softened, and for the first time, he allowed a hint of emotion to show in his voice. "Emily," he said gently, "I've felt the same. From the moment I saw you last night, I knew you were strong. But it's not just that I can't stop thinking about you. About being near you, protecting you, and sharing these moments with you." The words hung in the air, charged with honesty and emotion. Emily felt tears prick her eyes, but they were not tears of fear. They were tears of relief, joy, and a sense of belonging she had never known. They sat in silence for a moment, the fire crackling between them, their emotions spoken without words. Emily felt a sense of courage welling up inside her, the courage to trust fully, to embrace her feelings, and to let herself be vulnerable. Slowly, she reached out, placing her hand over Jack's. He responded immediately, holding her hand gently but firmly. A silent promise of support and care. The warmth of his touch, combined with the strength she felt in his presence, made her heart swell with emotion. "I'm scared sometimes," she admitted quietly, her voice trembling slightly. "Not of you, but of losing this, of facing the unknown. But I trust you, Jack. I trust you more than I've trusted anyone." Jack squeezed her hand reassuringly. "You don't have to be afraid," he said. "We'll face it together. Whatever comes next, we face it as a team. And you're stronger than you know, Emily. You've proven that time and time again." His words, simple, yet profound, anchored her in the moment. She felt her fear dissolve, replaced by a deep sense of certainty. With him by her side, she could face anything. As the night deepened, they shared more than words. They shared glances, small touches, and quiet moments of presence. The pull of desire, which had been growing slowly over the past days, now became undeniable. It was not reckless or rushed. It was a careful, mutual acknowledgement of the bond they had built, the trust they had nurtured, and the emotions they could no longer hide. Emily realized that desire was not just about longing, it was about connection, respect, and the understanding that they had both chosen to be present for each other fully and honestly. Eventually, Emily leaned slightly closer, resting her head near Jack's shoulder. He responded by wrapping an arm gently around her, a protective and tender gesture that made her feel safe, cherished, and seen. The firelight danced across their faces, illuminating the quiet intimacy of the moment. Emily's heart swelled with gratitude, relief, and a growing joy that had nothing to do with fear or danger, and everything to do with trust, connection, and love. The night passed slowly, filled with quiet conversation, shared laughter, and the comforting rhythm of two hearts learning to beat in sync. Emily understood that her journey had begun in fear and uncertainty, but it had led her to a place of courage, trust, and connection she had never imagined. Jack had not just saved her from the night she feared. He had shown her the strength of companionship, the power of vulnerability, and the beauty of desire, tempered by trust and respect. By dawn, a new sense of calm settled over them. The fear that had once seemed insurmountable had been replaced by a quiet confidence and certainty. Emily knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but she also knew that with Jack by her side, she could face them without fear. The bond they shared had transformed from simple gratitude to deep emotional connection, rooted in trust, understanding, and mutual respect. As the sun rose, casting a golden light over the cabin, Emily and Jack sat together by the window, hands intertwined. They did not need to speak. Their presence, their shared journey, and their unspoken emotions conveyed everything. Emily felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that she was not alone, that she had found someone who saw her fully and chose to stay. And in that moment, she understood that desire, trust, and love could coexist beautifully, guiding them forward into the unknown with courage and hope. The story that began with fear, darkness, and uncertainty had transformed into one of connection, trust, and enduring affection. Emily shivered once, not from cold, not from fear, but from the warmth of being seen, valued, and loved. The night she had dreaded had become the night that changed her life forever, introducing her to someone who would stand beside her, protect her, and share in the joys and challenges of life. And so, in the quiet cabin bathed in morning light, with the world outside still vast and unpredictable, Emily and Jack embraced the new beginning before them, together, strong, and ready to face whatever life had in store.